Oops. Does it say Chris? Does it say Alex Jackson on that little screen there? Should do.
No,
No,
just put it.
on the little.
Right hand corner.
Yeah, should do.
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
With hang on. We're 2 or 3 minutes late. I do apologise for that. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for coming. And the first thing we will do is we will introduce ourselves. So I'll start with me. I'm Jane Bell and I'm the Chair of Licensing.
I'm Councillor Paul Wharton-Hardman and I'm the Vice Chair of this committee.
Alex Jackson, legal. Chris Ward, Assets Manager.
Hilary Bedford, Councillor for Wilton-Dale East.
Peter Gabbett, Councillor for Gloucester Call.
James Geeson, Councillor.
Emma Stevens, Councillor, Bamber Bridge East.
Harry Hancock, Councillor at Broad Oak, Pemberton.
Councillor Matthew Forshaw for Count Green, Gregson Lane.
Claire Gornall, Democratic Services Officer.
Ignore everything I've just said. Please use your microphones because there are people who can't always hear very well. Okay? Right. Now, thank you for attending this meeting. And before we start, I would like to outline some housekeeping rules. There are no planned alarms. So if the alarm does go off, please can you leave by the emergency exits? And I'm right in thinking it's through the wheel room that way, isn't it? Yeah, through there. Not through the wall. You have to go through the door and then through that way. Okay, and that way. But we're not going to have any alarms tonight, so you'll be all right. Can you please switch your mobile phones off or put them on silent? Thank you. Members of the committee are attending in person here at the Civic Centre, and other members of the council may also be dialing in on Microsoft Teams to observe and to participate. And I can see that Councillor Councillor Pritchard, who is online. Yes? So good evening, Councillor. But only members of this committee can vote. Please note this meeting is being recorded and is live streamed on YouTube. The web link is displayed on the agenda for the meeting and can be found on the council's website. Any members on Teams are asked to keep their microphones on mute and only unmute if they wish to speak. Could I remind members to unmute themselves once they've finished speaking to enable the meeting to progress smoothly. Individual members of the public may speak, but for no longer than 5 minutes, and I will invite the public to speak after committee have debated the report. And now we'll go on to the agenda. Now, I have all this is written down because we have to have it all written down. We have to do it all properly. Right. Apologies. Have we got any apologies, Claire?
Yes, Chair, we've got apologies from Councillor Buttery and we have Councillor Rainsbury, who's a substitute tonight.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Members are requested to indicate at this stage in the proceedings if there are any items on the agenda which they intend to declare as an interest. Members are reminded that if an interest is disclosed as pecuniary interest, they must leave the room for the whole of the item. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. And now the minutes of the last meeting. I've got the minutes of the last meeting here. Are there any points of accuracy on the minutes, or can we proceed to accept the minutes from the last meeting? Who was here to Paul?
Chair, I think I was the only member here present at that meeting. So
That was in September. Yeah.
And I think you watched them online. So
I
I'll
was
propose there was a true and accurate record.
Right, and I'll second that for being online. Okay. And then there was minutes of a subcommittee meeting. I think that was in November, if I remember rightly. Let me get to the bit of paper that says on Tuesday, 8th of November. I was here, so I can present. I will confirm that these are accurate minutes. But who can second them? Who was here?
Chair, I'm unable to second because I'm a councillor, but I can confirm that I was at the meeting and that the decision notice of that meeting was agreed by all the members present at the time.
Okay, thank you. And now we're on to item 4. I've got 2 4s on my piece of paper. So I'm on 4B.
So, Chair, can we just, are the minutes agreed?
Oh, the minutes agreed. Yes, the minutes. Well, as nobody else was there, we'll have to agree them.
Do you just second it?
Yeah, seconder. This is because we're now a new committee and these were the old committee meetings. So a bit difficult really to...
I'm happy to second.
Yeah, we're happy about them. Yeah. Okay. Now then, we're to the CCTV policy. Okay. And the consultation feedback. Members are advised that the report can be found on agenda item page 11. And I'm going to invite Christopher Ward, the officer, to present this item. And we will speak on it as and when we are necessary. Because Chris, can you?
Thank you, Chair. Just got a PowerPoint which we'll get up on screen. Just one moment. Okay, so CCTV policy, which is the consultation feedback following the meeting from September 2022. So as a background, the report presents to members the feedback from multiple consultations that have taken place since the report was last presented to members on the 9th of September 2022. Members are asked to consider the consultation responses from both members of the trade, the residents of South Ribble, the crime statistics provided by Leinster Constabulary and previous licensing cases, to determine whether or not to proceed to a mandatory CCTV policy, or to accept officer recommendations for a non-mandatory CCTV policy, with the additional change to the policy that permits vehicle proprietors to have factory-fitted tinted windows within licensed vehicles, provided that compliant CCTV systems are installed and approved by South Ribble Borough Council officers prior to a licence being granted. So background, the purpose of CCTV. CCTV is widely seen as a way forward in safeguarding both drivers and passengers. It gives confidence and reassurance to the public and drivers. People are more likely to police their own behaviour, provide important evidence based on a criminal investigation. It deters and prevents the occurrence of crime, reducing the fear of crime, and it assists the police and insurance companies in investigating incidents of crime or accidents. The issue of potentially mandating CCTV is not a new thing. It's been on the agenda at this council for some time. Previously, the committee have explored the option of mandating CCTV in licensed vehicles, and the policy was previously renewed and reviewed in 2018 and 2020. Previous attempts found no local evidence base to support a decision to mandate CCTV as per the requirements of the ICO. Members should note that we're not looking if drivers are permitted to use CCTV in vehicles within this report, but if we should be forcing drivers to have CCTV in their vehicles through a mandatory policy. Currently, CCTV is permitted at the driver's own discretion, providing the CCTV complies with the current data protection requirements. It's capable of storing images or audio files in a manner which are encrypted to prevent them being downloaded or viewed by the driver or any other person travelling in the vehicle. The image or audio files must only be downloaded by an authorised officer or a council or police constable. De-encryption software should be provided to the council. A lifetime licence for such software may also be required, and there must be a minimum of 2 CCTV signs which are clearly visible to passengers. And the current policy on CCTV can be found attached to the report as background document 1. Officers have reached out to neighbouring authorities and asked if they've got a mandatory CCTV policy in place. In response, all but one authority have stated no to mandating CCTV. That includes Preston, Pendle, Rosendale have said yes, Fylde, Hyndburn, Chorley, Wyre, Blackburn, Burnley and Ribble Valley. Under government guidance via the Department for Transport, DFT, council are expected to review their policies and consider if mandating CCTV would either have a positive or adverse effect on the safety of hackney carriages and private hire vehicles. Taking into account the guidance and recommendation requirements for data protection from the Department of Transport, the DFT, the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO, Surveillance Cameras Commissioners, SCC, and the Local Government Association, the LGA. The DFT states that all licensing authorities should consult to identify if there is a local circumstance which indicates that the installation of CCTV in vehicles would either have a positive or adverse effect on the safety of travelling residents and the private hire trade and hackney carriage trade themselves, including children, vulnerable adults, and taking into account any potential privacy issues. Considerations before mandating a CCTV policy. When seeking the development of a mandatory CCTV policy, various factors should be taken into consideration: proportionality and the need for an evidence base, the cost of implementation, legal compliance, specification and ICO recommendations, incentives and trade buying. Members may feel that the inherent vulnerability relating to passengers and drivers means that a mandatory CCTV policy can be justified as a proactive and preventative measure. In an ideal world, this would be the case, and mandatory CCTV would be implemented as a precautionary measure. But the ICO and ICC are unlikely to consider high-profile cases of CSC, for example, Rotherham or elsewhere, being used as proportionate justification for implementing Southwell CCTV. Justification for local need is required to mandate a policy that forces drivers to install CCTV within their vehicles. The potential impact of mandating CCTV on drivers and passengers' privacy should be considered through a data protection impact assessment, a DPIA. The how and when CCTV systems are required to be used strikes a proportionate balance between privacy and safeguarding. A DPIA is a mandatory requirement of the Information Commissioner before any CCTV policy is implemented. The DPIA helps you identify and minimise the data protection risks of a mandatory CCTV policy and to answer fundamental but tricky questions, including what is our justification? When should the CCTV be operating? Should the driver be able to manually control the system? For what purpose will the CCTV footage be used? How do we ensure that the footage is kept secure and only used by authorised persons? And how should we allow audio recording, and if so, what circumstances? How long should it be retained? And what are the risks to passengers and drivers' data protection rights and interests? The DPIA is a working document and it can be found attached to the report as Appendix 3. As mentioned, the ICO state authorities should not just hold historical examples from their area as evidence-based, but if they need to mandate a policy, there needs to be a clear evidence base from an overwhelming local need that CCTV is needed in the area. Just implementing a CCTV policy without clear justification could leave the council open to judicial review. To collate an evidence base with source data through crime statistics, trade buying, public buying and investigations by the licensing authority. It is to note that not all crimes are reported through to the police, so a consultation of the trade is vital to find out if they've encountered any issues that could be used as an evidence base to a mandatory policy. System requirements. When a taxi private hire driver is working, clearly the use of CCTV could be proportionate or arguably necessary. It's justified with an evidence base. It helps combat crime and to protect drivers and vulnerable passengers. However, when a taxi private hire driver is off duty, the continued use of CCTV recording is likely to be unlawful, unfair and excessive in light of data protection and human rights legislation. GDPR or data protection laws state that the users of technology need to be careful to consider the personal privacy implications before implementing any kind of surveillance system. Some CCTV systems in taxis are active whenever the vehicle is running. CCTV cameras then record when the drivers are picking up the children from school, going shopping, using it for family use or their own personal use. Taxi drivers are entitled to their own personal privacy when they're not working. Any audio recording system should be able to be turned off when the vehicle is being used for personal use. Where the ICO has been made aware of councils implementing systems like those that continuously record, they've advised that this approach is likely to be disproportionate to the problem they're trying to address. According to the ICO, unfair and excessive processing of personal data is unlawful. Processing of personal data must be for a specific reason and could breach Article 8 of the Human Rights Act 1998, which states, everyone has the right to respect to his own privacy and family life, his home and his correspondence. There should be no interference by public authority with the exercise of the right to accept such in accordance with the law and is necessary in a democratic society in the interest of national security, public safety, economical well-being, prevention, disorder, crime, for protection of health or morals, protection of rights and freedoms of others. It's compliance systems, a simple but effective panic switch that's available for the driver and the passenger, one in the front, one in the back, that engages the audio recording mechanism would need to be installed as part of an approved system. Approved installers with capable systems are available in the immediate area. The specification will be managed by officers in line of current technology and requirements of the ICO, then advertised on the council website. Any CCTV systems must also be registered with the ICO. Cost of implementation, the units are relatively modest in price. They can cost between £390 to £450 when officers have done research. There's often grants and funding available towards the cost. But if this is not possible and we mandate the policy, the cost could fall to the owners of the vehicle for the cost of the installation of the CCTV. If any mandatory policy were to be introduced, the council may be challenged legally. This would incur legal costs of defending a judicial review against the policy. So trade consultation. Trade buying is essential. The council needs to know if the drivers feel that mandating CCTV would safeguard them, if it would work as a deterrent for abusive passengers or dishonest claims against them. A consultation exercise was carried out in November-December 2022, and all members of the trade received a physical consultation document to their home address. The level of correspondence responses from the trade were low, with only 12 drivers responded out of approximately 250 drivers at the time. And as you can see on screen, the results were, if a driver of private hire carriage ever suffered any of the below in the last 3 years, the responses were quite low. Aggressive or threatening behaviour was 2. Customers not paying 5. Abusive or racist customers inappropriate conversations 2. Physical assault or disability discrimination we didn't receive any responses for. If you've answered yes to any of the following, do you think CCTV in the vehicle would have assisted or prevented any of the above? Half said yes, half said no, and 3 didn't answer. The implications currently affecting you, what would those be? The cost of installation, 8 out of 11 said yes. Data privacy protection issues was pretty much half and half, 6 and 5. Maintenance, the trade wasn't overly bothered about, and other received 4 and 7. So as a driver, are you concerned about the financial burden of installing CCTV in your vehicle? 8 out of the responses said yes. The council were able to assist in the cost of the CCTV. 6 said yes, 5 still said no. And do you agree or disagree that licensed vehicles should have internal CCTV? 6 said yes, 5 said no. In addition to the trade consultation, we did receive an email from a member of the trade who stated, "Welcome CCTV, sooner the better. I've been an owner driver in South Ribble for over 20 years. From being assaulted from behind, punched in the face, along with people spitting at you. I've even had a knife pulled on myself and someone has set fire to my vehicle." We also consulted the public. So the public consultation exercise was carried out again throughout November and December to identify where the local circumstances which indicate the installation of CCTV in vehicles would either a positive or adverse effect on the safety of drivers and passengers within the vehicle. We consulted on the council's website, which was advertised on the council's Facebook page, and it was also advertised on the front page of the council website. We received 22 responses on the consultation. The responses on the public consultation were better. We got 21 responses of yes and 1 of no. So you agree it should be within vehicles. Any local examples of where video or audio could have been beneficial? 16 to 6. Do you agree that CCTV would be beneficial to drivers? 21 yes, 1 no. Do you agree that video or audio CCTV recording would reduce the fear of crime? 18 said yes, 4 said no. Any local examples of where CCTV did or could have reduced the fear of crime? Only 4 said yes, they had examples, and 18 said no. In your opinion, are there any adverse effects of the safety of passage, including children and vulnerable adults, by installing CCTV in licensed vehicles? 4 said yes, 18 said no. In addition to the public consultation, when we've advertised the consultation on Facebook, we got 16 responses which were in favour, but 16 of those were just comments under the Facebook advertisement. Police crime statistics provided by Lancashire Constabulary of offences against taxi drivers in South Ribble for the last 12 months, December 21 to December 22. The police inspector who provided the data stated within his responses that the number of statistics provided will be far lower than the actual figure of offences, as he could only search on the word taxi, and he said the geographical areas for Preston and South Ribble have changed. We received 18 complaints to the police over 12 months for making off without payment, 7 of criminal damage, 1 being racially aggravated, assaults, 1 being racially aggravated, 5, threatening with a bladed article, 1, public order offences, 2, theft of item in a taxi by customers, 2. The report was planned to come back to members in January, but officers were concerned the responses from the consultation were so low. The crime statistics were low, inconclusive, and did not warrant an evidence base for a local need for a CCTV policy. The then Director of Licensing, John Harrison, took the report to the senior management team, SMT, for a decision if we should consult again for further responses from the trade. Directors decided that was a good idea, and an additional consultation took place in March. We'll report that back to members. Again, officers physically wrote out to all members of the trade to the home addresses. The results on the second consultation again were low. We only received 8 responses this time. Again, a serious lack of support from the trade with regards to mandatory CCTV, with no real issues reported back this time from the trade. Aggressive or threatening behaviour, we only got 3 reports of that, with 5 saying no. Customers not paying, 3, and 5 again saying no. Abusive or racist customers, inappropriate conversation, we only received 2 for that. No reports of physical assault, and no reports of disability discrimination. If you've answered yes to any of the above, do you think CCTV would have helped prevent or assisted or prevented any of the above? Everybody who answered that question said no. What implications of currently affecting you choosing installing CCTV in your vehicle? Cost of installation, 5 said yes, 3 said no. Privacy data protection issues, 4 said yes, 4 said no. Maintenance, everybody answered no who answered. And other, we had 3 and 4. As a driver, are you concerned about the financial burden of installing CCTV system within your vehicle? Again, that was split 4 and 4. If the council were able to assist in the cost of CCTV via where's possible grants, would you choose to install CCTV? 1 said yes, the rest all said no. Would you install CCTV in a new vehicle if this allowed for tinted windows? Again, 1 said yes, 8 said no. Do you agree drivers should have an option to fit either CCTV or non-transparent tinted windows as a safeguarding measure? 6 said yes, 2 said no. Do you agree or disagree that licensed vehicles should have internal CCTV installed? 3 agreed and 5 disagreed. Other comments were received in that consultation were cameras should only be monitored if there's an issue. I do not agree with mandating CCTV. It's not justified or pragmatic and a waste of money. It's beneficial for drivers who work night shifts. It's not needed. It should be up to the driver's own views. Tinted windows are allowed in other districts. So a summary of the evidence that we've collated. So the first consultation, 252 drivers were written out to the home's address. We only received 12 consultation responses. Clearly a distinct lack of appetite from the trade. Of those members of trade who responded to the consultation, the feedback on serious offences were considerably low. Only 2 reports of each receiving regarding aggressive or threatening behaviour and abusive race of customers in inappropriate conversations. The response indicates that the trade feel it should be their own option to install CCTV and not imposed on them. So the crime statistics, the evidence provided from the crime statistics gave some examples, but again, little by way of business case for mandating CCTV that is required in South Ribble. The crime statistics on the drivers are low, of only 35 crimes committed on drivers, 18 of those were simply making off without payment and 2 cases of theft. This leaves 15 cases out of 252 licensed drivers over a 12-month period. And officers feel this does not justify the requirement for mandating CCTV in South Ribble as a safeguarding measure for our trade. The evidence from the public consultations were stronger. 21 out of 22 thought the consultation on CCTV in licensed vehicles would benefit the passengers using licensed vehicles, but only 4 people answered yes to having local examples where CCTV did or could reduce the fear of crime, and no examples were given in the consultation. Officers agree with the public who have answered the consultation that CCTV vehicles, CCTV is a positive measure, but we feel the lack of examples given it does not justify forcing the trade into CCTV and a mandatory policy in South Ribble. Results from the second consultation again were low, with only 8 responses. Again, a serious lack of support from the trade in mandating CCTV, with no real issues reported back from the trade, no cases of assault reported, 2 cases of aggressive or threatening behaviour and 2 cases of abusive or racial behaviour. Worth remembering that drivers can currently install CCTV if they want to. There is a voluntary policy at the moment in place. Again, as per the first consultation, the responses indicated that the trade feel it should be their own option to install CCTV and it should not be imposed on them. Members may want to ask themselves before making any decision, does the statistics provided within the evidence have a local need that needs to be addressed by mandating a CCTV policy? So the risk to the council on mandating CCTV, it's an important balance which must be made between privacy and proportionality. The imposition of a mandatory policy could leave the council open to a successful judicial review from members of the licensing trade if they feel aggrieved by any decision taken to impose CCTV policy upon them. The council must have a reasonable grounds for introducing mandatory CCTV in taxis. It would be for the council to show that there is a problem in the borough which is evidence-based, that there needs to be addressed and able to be justified why they consider mandatory policy in taxis and private hire vehicles to be an effective solution. The Information Commissioner's Office and Surveillance Camera Commissioners have given the strongest possible advice that a mandatory CCTV policy is very difficult for licensing authorities to justify a strong evidence base for. So the proposal, officers believe that a mandatory requirement for CCTV is not proportionate from the evidence collected. The proposal to members is to continue with a CCTV policy which outlines the requirements for those wishing to voluntarily install CCTV, but with an addition to the policy which allows vehicles with installed CCTV which is compliant with the policy to be permitted windows with a higher level of tint than vehicles without CCTV installed. Currently, the policy only permits vehicles to have windows with the rear section of the car that permits 50% light transparency. Replacing tinted windows in vehicles can be a costly exercise. The use of CCTV to mitigate the need for replacement windows should be something committee can consider to promote vehicle proprietors to install CCTV. The level of tint will only be permitted to the original specifications included by the manufacturers of the vehicle. Officers would check this before the vehicle is licensed. Officers feel CCTV negates the need for clear windows in the rear section of a licensed vehicle, and it's a much more robust safeguarding measure. Officers feel this would steer drivers into installing CCTV in their vehicles, with a clear cost saving between the cost of CCTV and changing windows in the vehicle. There will also be more drivers buying higher specification vehicles, which is a benefit to passenger comfort. The new proposed CCTV policy can be found attached to the report as Appendix 10, and the 2 additional paragraphs will be added to Section 6.6 and 7.5 of the taxi licensing policy with regard to tinted windows, which can be found of Section 113 of the report. So next steps, so following the consultation exercise and the statistics collated within this report, members are now asked to ultimately make the decision on the assessment about what they would consider to be proportionate on balancing the right to privacy versus safeguarding the public and drivers, to determine whether to proceed to a mandatory CCTV policy or to accept officer recommendations. If members are minded to accept the officer's proposal, the changes to the taxi licensing policy for CCTV, then the report would be forwarded to the next meeting of the full council with a recommendation for formal adoption of the proposed policy. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Chris. Very comprehensive and a really good précis of 174 pages, might I ask, which I presume everybody read for their homework. Yes, good. I'm so pleased. You can breathe now, if you like. You know, you could breathe. You could have a drop of whiskey, I think, after all that. Right, it's up to us now to discuss and the recommendations from the licensing officers. So at this point, I'm going to invite members of the committee. Have they got anything they want to ask, discuss, talk to Chris about? This is your opportunity to clarify things. Give it a minute while you're thinking. Right, James.
Do we have figures at the moment for how many taxis in the area are fitted with CCTV?
We've got no drivers at the minute with CCTV in the vehicles.
Thank you. As always, thank you to Chris and the whole of the licensing team for a very comprehensive report brought to us. I think the crime figures for themselves show that there's been no incidences involving any sort of attacks, so to speak, or any instances on members of the public. And whilst we certainly don't condone any sort of criminal activity towards or trade members, there is a policy in place at the moment for voluntary CCTV. So should anybody feel vulnerable or feel it appropriate to have CCTV in their vehicle to protect themselves, we do currently allow for that at the council. So I think that's some safeguarding and something we can proudly say that we support. I don't think anybody here would disagree that CCTV is there as a crime preventative measure, but we are being asked to look at proportionality in respect of, can we justify as a council saying you must put this in your vehicle when there's no evidence there to suggest that it would actually make a significant difference to the safety of the public in South Ribble. So thank you for the report, and thank you certainly for the presentation. It's really helped certainly make my mind up and look at the justification for can we do this or not really. Thank you.
Moment. Yes, John.
Just a few thoughts on the others, because obviously our priorities for the travelling public, and that's our major priority on this. And you're saying that you're quite right, said the taxi drivers have the choice to put them in if they feel vulnerable, but the passengers don't have that choice. We go down the streets, we're under CCTV all the time, talk about privacy. You get on a bus, you're under CCTV. The only time that this would be used, would be in evidence, if there was an incident. So it's not putting anybody and his privacy at risk in that case, from my view. And under data protection, the only time that could be challenges like, for civil or criminal cases. Section 29, 35 cover both of them aspects. So I think I can understand where you're coming from, but I really do think, that we should be looking at the public. You look at the figures of the people who responded, as normally, they're woefully low, people don't respond. And it's only when there's an incident, that's when they sort of respond and say, why haven't you done this? So that's my only concern about this, is that the public aren't having a major say, and it's left solely the taxi drivers. And I understand their position as well. But again, they get worried about, it could be held against them and such. But you only have to look at the examples of, say, police officers' body cams. They're fought against them forever, but that's the biggest safeguard they've got. And everybody's oblivious to them. They're used all the time. So I think we're being very overcautious, perhaps, with this report. But I do accept it, and I accept what you're saying, but that's just my view.
Peter?
Thanks, Chair. Just a question in regards to the risk of mandating the CCTV. Specifies that the potential to a judicial review. What is the actual risk to the council? Is that financial or just an overturning of the policy?
It would be a financial risk if it were judicially reviewed. Bad publicity for the council as well.
Two-edged sword. Very much a two-edged sword. In a way, you can't do right for doing wrong. It's a bit like that. And I think what John's just said is very true, because when you think about what we are about safeguarding the public. It's disappointing that through the consultation, so very few people, both taxi drivers and the public, responded. Whereas I suspect if you just spoke to somebody in the street and said, do you think it's a good idea? They'd probably say yes. Anecdotally, they would probably be going, oh, I think that's a good idea. Well, why didn't you answer the consultation then? I think if we just went out and asked people, they'd say, oh, yeah, it's a good idea. But the evidence that we've got and the consultation we've got is saying, well, no, not really. If you look at those crime figures, what was it, 18? Well, I've got it here. If you look at it, 18 people making off without paying, which is the main thing. You think, well, it's not really that life-threatening, is it, that somebody's not paid? But having said that, if you look at, you only need, because I'm the safeguarding officer for the members, and I'm very conscious that Susie Lamput didn't tell people where she was going and she disappeared, and I'm very conscious that might only be one young person, but it did happen. So you can't dismiss it that we've only got a few numbers, because you only need one thing. And Jo Cox got murdered, didn't she? You only need one person with one knife. So I'm just sort of throwing that out there, because we've got less numbers doesn't mean to say it's never going to happen. And we are about safeguarding our and I'm not persuading anybody anywhere else. This is just some thoughts from what John was saying, and we need to be looking at that. That's all.
Yeah, could I just add just a little bit on that, what you were saying there about to the ICO want these high profile, they're looking at high profile cases and Rotherham and such. The thing is, it becomes a high profile case when it comes to light. And we don't want to be that sort of bird that's got a high-profile case in the background there, and then all of a sudden it happens, and for me, one's enough. But that's just so.
John, you and I were both on the committee when all that stuff was going on.
That's correct.
And we got, as the licensing committee, we sort of got pulled into it. I'm looking over, you were around, weren't you, when all that was going on? And we sort of got pulled into it, even though there was not really anything going on here, but you'd only got to breathe funny and you got a taxi driver.
You can see what's on my mind, can't you?
Yeah. So.
Well, it's been said in the report, but obviously it's been made clear that the data protection and privacy watchdogs need a lot of convincing before CCTV can be mandated in vehicles. So that's something to bear in mind, that there are, if you like, third-party bodies who have a view and have enforcement powers about collection of data by the state, and they've made it clear that there needs to be a very strong evidence base before this could be introduced.
you know, that their guidelines, wasn't it? Their guidelines were that it was that, you know, they would look at councils to make it mandatory, but it was only guidelines. They weren't under good to our heads. I think it's interesting that our local councils around and about are not adopting it, apart from is it Rosendale was the only one that said yes? I think that's an interesting result, in that they also don't feel it's a mandatory thing. I think the fact that we could encourage our taxi drivers to do it voluntary is, you know, so.
My only concern is at the moment that people don't have a choice. If there are no taxis registered in the area with CCTV and you wanted one, you'd have no option. You may have somebody you feel is particularly vulnerable and you'd want it in the cab for whatever reason, but there isn't an option at the moment. That's what's going through my head at the moment.
No, I know where that's coming from, but when we look at all the stuff that we do about safeguarding and making sure that the drivers that we give licenses to are a safe and proper person, and we are I think we're probably one of the strictest boroughs as far as our taxi drivers are concerned, aren't we, Chris? You know, we do come down like a dose of salts on them when they're doing anything wrong. So as far as that's concerned, I ride a lot of taxis. I feel safe that we've done everything we possibly can to keep everybody, however vulnerable they are, safe in our cabs. So it wouldn't. I don't think it would concern me that there wasn't a CCTV camera, because did I really want somebody to see me paralytic on the back seat? Do you know? Not that that often happens, but there is that certain. Do you really want this out in the public domain?
If I could come in, I mean, we seem to have this sort of idea that everybody's going to see these videos. They wouldn't see a paralytic unless there was some incident. And this is it. And I think the government and certainly the ICO have been quite clever on this, because they've put the burden on us. You know, they've left it to us to make a decision and say, well, you've got to be pretty sure about this. You know, but there are safeguards within the data protection area to stop this happening. And as I mentioned before, like, you know, if there's a criminal investigation, they've got Section 29 of the Act, they've got, if there's a civil investigation, you've got Section 35 of the Act, they can go and ask for that information. Other than that, it's all protected. So it's not going to be out in the public domain unless there's an incident. So this is, I think they missed this point, that it's a quite, how can I say, it's a tool that's available if something happens. And I'll just leave it to that. I can understand, though, the reticence. I really do. Sorry.
One of my concerns is we have a lot of taxis in this area who are licensed in Chorley, licensed in Preston, and particularly Uber licensed in Wolverhampton. We have got no power at all to insist they have CCTV. So there'll be a huge chunk of taxis still working in this area not having CCTV. I know our drivers are being disadvantaged and having the burden of cost put on them, which ultimately may make them leave South Ribble. As Councillor Bell mentioned, we have some of the strictest controls in licensing in all of the councils in the Northwest, and all our taxi drivers undergo CSE training. They undergo lots more than the minimum requirement by legislation. We do so much to protect the public already. So that's one of my concerns. The second part is going back to what I said earlier. Everything we do has to be justified. We're here to protect the public. That's correct. That's our main aim, but it has to be proportionate and justified. And if we mandate this with no evidence at all to suggest there's an issue, because we've got no crime statistics which will show we've had any issues on members of the public, we could all sit here and say, well, this may happen, but it's never happened before, and we'll be open to legal challenge, and it will cost the council hundreds of thousands of pounds and reputational damage when we can't justify putting a mandatory policy.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a pity that we've had a poor response from the consultations that have been put out from taxi drivers and members of the public. I feel that from the statistics we've seen, crime is low, and as such, I don't think we require a mandatory CCTV. The cost of the instalment for taxi drivers and whatnot is fairly high, and we must also consider that we we must give them their own privacy. And I think at this stage, the drivers should be allowed to install CCTV if they wish. I don't think we should force them to put it in. And therefore, I accept the officer's recommendations and leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I can just come in. I wasn't actually talking against it. I just wanted to bring a few issues for discussion on this. I think it would be advantageous if the council gives incentives and tries to encourage them, the taxi drivers, to take this on board. I support the motion. I support the report. It's just I wanted to highlight those points. But I think if the council give incentives or sort of whether it be financial or whatever to support. I mean, we had the similar problem. Yeah, we are strict because we had the similar with the age of taxis and that we got criticised for that driving it. But we're looking at the safeguarding of the people. So I'll go with that. But I do support the report. I just wanted to highlight these issues.
I think as officers, in an ideal world, we want mandatory policy in place. But the way that the guidance from the governing bodies of the ICO and what have you, they want you to have a reactive policy really to something that a local needs, so that it has to be addressing a problem in your area. The consultation responses don't show that there's any problem in this area. So yes, we could still mandate it if you wanted to, but then we could be seen to have gone against the guidance of the governing bodies that say there has to be a local need that's being addressing by you implementing a mandatory policy. The systems isn't a problem anymore. They're all compliant. The ones we'd accept be compliant with recommendations from the ICO. So issues like the Southampton case and things like that, where audio recording was continuous recording and wasn't turned off. That's one problem, but the other side is justification behind mandating it and forcing it upon drivers, which isn't what this case was about. That was about continuous recording, whereas the ICO is stating, if you want to mandate your policy, you have to be addressing a local need. And currently, from that feedback of that consultation, there is no local need. So us as officers would like to see a mandatory policy, but we feel we can't. That's why we've given you the recommendations that we have.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I mean, I'm totally in agreement with that. We don't have the evidence. Yes, Justin.
They were minded to make this mandatory, they would have done so in the statutory standards, and they steered clear of it. They advised to research and maybe look at mandating it. But they steered away from saying this should be mandatory, which they would have done if there was a damning case for it nationally.
I'm just looking to see if there's anybody on Teams that wanted to say anything. I can't see any indication. Can anybody else? No. Okay. I didn't want to leave anybody out. Has everybody had their say? Because I can invite Mr. Oakes. Did you want to say anything, Mr. Oakes?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, elected members. I'm from the Hackney Drivers Association. I represent some of the vehicles in this neck of the woods. Just to give you a bit of background, because I can see there are some members here that don't know me. I've not seen them in meetings before. I have about 2,000 members across the different areas. I'm probably the first one who kicked off the CCTV, and there's a lot of hits and buts, and we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do the other. However, now it's a bit different because there are councils now taking it on board. Because believe me or believe me not, the attacks on taxi drivers are on the increase. And we've had people killed on the job, knifed, shot, beaten to death. And as a trade representative, I'm appalled by it. Now, there is something councils can do. Yes, I've said about the report that's gone before you tonight. It's certainly not what I talked about with the officer. I want it mandatory because that's the only way we will get them in every vehicle, is to mandate it. And I'd rather mandate it in every vehicle and have nothing happen than not mandate it and somebody gets seriously hurt or worse, killed. Now, there are some things that say, some council said, well, we can't be the data controller. Absolute rubbish. You were data controllers anyway. All I want to do is to protect, my job is to protect the industry. And in this day and age, at the moment, things are getting bad. People can't afford gas or electric or food. The spate of robberies are up. Don't take it on my say-so. Go online to the taxi driver online and read it for yourself. Go to the private hire monthly. It's full of it. Now, you may not want this and you may not like what's being asked of you. What do you think I'm going to say to the press if there's somebody hurt or worse? Well, we asked the council. And though I appreciate what work's been done on that report and saying that, well, you can have manufactured tinted windows, but you have to put CCTV in. I know what'll happen. They won't buy them. You've got a problem coming anyway, because when vehicles have to be changed, they'll not be able to afford them. And that's what's happening. I'm sitting here telling you what I know. And we are campaigning all over to get this done. And it may not be popular, but your report has based it on local things. In the national, when they went out to consultation, one of the biggest issues, and the public were in favour of CCTV. They want to be safe. They want to be seen to be safe. I want drivers to be safe and members of the public, which is our bread and butter, to be safe as well. Yeah, it's it's a difficult decision for you, and there's all sorts of thoughts and roundabouts to go around. We're not saying, if you agree, that it should come in tomorrow, 12 months. Anyway, I'm not going to say any more about it. You know, it's up to you. You are the elected members of South Ribble. There are others I know you put the local ones in, but there are others looking at it. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Mr. Oakes. Thank you. Has anybody got any questions for Mr. Oakes? Do you want to say something? Yes, carry on.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Oakes. Obviously, nobody wants to see any taxi driver assaulted or sorry, obviously nobody wants to see any taxi driver assaulted or worse, and that's not something we would ever want to see, and obviously we would support you in your cause. I think what's reassuring for you and your members is that we do have a voluntary policy in place, so they can have the CCTV should they feel vulnerable and feel subjected to that sort of behaviour. So I think that's some reassurance you can get out of today. It's sad to see that so few of your 2,000 members responded to the consultation, which may have assisted us further in looking at alternative options this evening. So I do wonder if in future any further any consultations on any other matters, it may be good if we could work together to consult your members and encourage a greater response to allow us to have an evidence base to justify future policies.
You know, Councillor, I've heard that speech so many times. I really have, from different authorities. If it's not mandatory, the biggest majority of drivers won't put it in. The paramount thing for this council and every council in this land is public safety. Yes, I'll shut up, Chair.
Yes, John, you want to say something?
Yeah, well, in fact, Paul's just gone through a lot of what we're going to say. That there's 252 members approached and 12 responded, and I think it would have helped your case, or certainly helped us to. You heard my views on it anyway. I want mandatory, but it would have helped the case and the argument had they responded, because we can only deal with what the information before us. So.
Yeah, just on the national front, if we could use those cases as evidence, we would do. But the ICO say you're not allowed to use those cases for your own local needs. So we're going by ICO guidance that says you're not allowed to use those local cases. I get what you're saying, Charles, that it should be a precautionary measure that drivers could have this happen to in this area. But those statistics you've quoted there are from different areas than South Ribble. There's no local need in South Ribble at the moment. The trade have reported no local need. The members of public have reported no local need. The police have reported no local need. The ICO states you need a local need. For me, it wouldn't be right for us to go to a mandatory policy with all those not in place as the ICO recommend.
Say something. I'm very licensing officers. Do you want to say anything at all? You're okay, right? Well, I'll bring the debate to a close. Thank you very much for joining in, and now we need to decide what we're going to do. I think let's just sit and think for a minute, everybody. Taxi driver representation. We just need to, it's a really important thing that we're going to be doing. So we need to be doing it with the right sort of mindset. I'll just give you a minute to just think, and then you can propose it if you want. Yeah. Do you want to propose? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose that we accept the officer recommendation.
Have we got a seconder? Oh, we've got handfuls of seconders, yes. Yeah, seconder, Harry, put his hand up and John, right. Okay, so we'll go to the vote then. Those in favour of accepting the recommendations from the licensing officer? All in favour? I'm looking. 1, 2, 3. Anybody against? One against, and I haven't voted. But I will. I'm in favour. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry, Mr. Oakes, it didn't go your way, but hopefully we will get some taxi drivers who voluntarily will put CCTV in if that's what they require. I am very pleased that we are a council that do have a very strict policy about who we give our taxi licenses to. So I think we can rest assured that that's something we can be proud of. And perhaps in the future, when things hopefully don't get worse, we don't want it to get worse because we don't want, we've got all this crime and we've got to have mandatory, so we don't want that. But thanks, Chris, for all your work. And
can I just update you on that, Chair?
Yeah.
We've just put about 230 drivers through mandatory CSE training as well. So that was a tutor-led course that was part of the requirement of the policies that upon request they have to attend. So there's just a few leftovers who were away or poorly at the time of the training, which will be a mop-up session.
Am I right in the fact that they do dementia training as well, don't they? It's not mandatory, but it's a voluntary thing they can do.
Yeah, officers from the communities, the team have contacted operators about that. Yeah, and passed that information.
So we do try to protect our residents in as many ways as we can. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Oakes. Thank you, licensing. You're not doing anything at night. Do you not go home at night? You know, do you not finish at 5 o'clock and go home? It's a poo do. Do you get paid overtime? Or can you come in tomorrow dinner time? Come in at dinner time tomorrow. Job's good. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks very much. Thanks, Mr. Oakes. Thank you. That's it. The meeting is now officially closed. Thank you, everybody, for participating.